have a disclaimer to make. I am an occupational therapist working in the province of Ontario in private practice, and I get referrals from many sources. And one of my referral sources is called CCRW, Canadian Council of Rehabilitation at Work. It is an organization which promote and support employment for persons with disabilities. And I have no conflict of interest with the March of Dimes for the purpose of this presentation. So in the early days post-stroke, you focus on your recovery. You've gone through the acute phase, and in rehab, you often think about how to return to your previous activities. For example, taking care of yourself, how to get around, how to perform your daily activities. Then a question arises: when do you go back to work? Today, we're going to talk about how to assess your readiness to return to work. So in stroke recovery, I'm not sure if you heard of the saying that there are no two strokes that are the same. So with regards to return to work after stroke, everyone's situation is different. For example, you're still in acute or rehab stage and is wondering about what things to consider when contemplating returning to work. Or you had a stroke a while ago and you're currently on disability and you have a job waiting for you, but you're not sure when to return. Or you have no job to return to, or it's clear that you cannot return to your previous job and need to find a new job. Or you've been off work for a long time and considering to return to employment. So in this presentation, I'll try to touch upon the various aspects to consider when looking at returning to work. So the American Stroke Association has put out a document titled Employment Readiness Checklist. And it shows you various aspects to consider when you're thinking of returning to work. So I'm going to click on the checklist and I'm going to share my screen and let me know if you can see the checklist. Yeah, okay. So this checklist looks at all the symptoms that people may have after a stroke. For example, headaches, sleep, daytime fatigue, seizure, thinking skills, etc. It goes on. And for each symptom, there are, you can look at how they affect you. So in column 1, you have high barriers to employment. Column 2, moderate barriers to employment, and column 3, low barriers to employment. So for example, headaches. Does your headaches frequently limit your ability, your activities? Or column 2, headaches sometimes limit your activities. Or column 3, headaches do not limit your activities. So as you go down the checklist, you can check off where you're at in your recovery. And after rating everything that you have, if you're in column 3, so that if most of all of the items are in column 3, that means that you are pretty close to going back to returning to work. But if you're in column 1, that means you're not quite ready yet. However, for those of you who are in column 2, you're pretty close to thinking of going back to work, but how do you get yourself from column 2 to column 3? And that's what I want to focus on for the rest of my presentation. We're just going to talk about each symptom as we go. So headaches, if you indicated that headaches sometimes limit your activities, you might want to pay attention to what triggers your headache. Or some people, if fatigue is your trigger, you might want to rest before you get tired. Or you might get a headache at a particular time of the day, for example, in the afternoon. Then you might want to plan your work activities in the morning. Or if you have difficulties with sleep, you might want to look at different ways to improve your sleep quality. So what's something we call sleep hygiene. You might want to decrease your screen time an hour before bed, or avoid taking long naps during the day, or doing things that relaxes you before you sleep, such as reading a good book, listening to music, relaxation music, or taking a warm bath before bed. Or if you have daytime fatigue, you might want to look at ways to how to save your energy and what we called energy conservations. There are several aspects to energy conservation that I'm not sure if you've heard of. One is planning ahead, So planning ahead of what you need to do for the week. So for example, if you're out all day tomorrow, you might want to make sure that you have enough rest today and the day after. Another P for energy conservation is prioritizing, looking at what's the most important thing for you and only do those things. Another P is positioning, looking at what's position you sitting often saves more energy than standing. And the last P is pacing, making sure that you pace yourself, taking breaks throughout the day. Some people may have fatigue due to their medications. So you might want to talk to your doctor or pharmacist to change the timing of when you take your medications. For those of you who may be ready to return to work, but fatigue is the only barrier, some employers may be able to accommodate by giving you a graduated return to work. So you actually start part-time work and gradually increase your work hours over the course of a few months or a few weeks to full-time hours. And the next symptom or barriers to employment is seizure. So are your seizures under control with medications? Have you obtained medical clearance to go back to work? So some jobs are easier to get medical clearance than others. For example, the safety risk working from home in front of a computer is very different from the safety risk of driving a forklift in a warehouse. So if you do work in a workplace setting, you might want to consider telling your employer that you have a history of seizures and create what we call a first aid plan of how to help you in case of a seizure in a workplace. The website, Epilepsy at Work, has lots of resources to support you when you're considering returning to employment. So I just want to show you that website. Again, I'm sharing my screen. And Jennifer, can you confirm that you're seeing the website? Okay, great. Yeah, so it has lots of information. One is understanding epilepsy in the workplace, seizure safety, how to make sure that you are safe and people know how to help you. And they have other helpful resources too in the website. A lot of stroke survivors experience a period of low mood, having ups and downs that stops you from doing things some days. And you can help yourself by filling your day with meaningful activities. So think of the activities that give you satisfaction. Exercise is important because it releases hormone called endorphins that makes you feel good. Talking to others is important. Try to share your thoughts and feelings with your loved ones, your friends, or join a support group. That might be helpful. And medications to lift your mood, of course, and more professional help with psychotherapy. Next, anxiety. If your anxiety is stopping you from doing things, consider accessing resources through Anxiety Canada. So they have put up a lot of information of how to deal with anxiety over the last year, I would say. They have a course called MAP for Adults. My Anxiety Plan is an anxiety management program that's free. They have an app called Mind Shift CBT app that you can download with various relaxation resources that you can use. And they have lots of videos and resources, cartoons that help you look at different types of anxiety. So lots of information there. And what I like from them is they have audios of several relaxation techniques on the website. Mindful breathing or progressive muscle relaxation audio that you can listen to. So when practicing any relaxation technique, it is important to practice these techniques several times a day on a continual basis to make sure that you're calm. And so that, well, make sure that you can use it when you get anxious. So practice a couple of times a day to make sure you get to know your breathing exercises, your mindfulness activities really good so that it will become helpful for you. Or if you have trouble with your thinking skills, try to think of work tasks that you can do and simulate them at home. So for example, if you work in front of a computer, try to do things in front of a computer, managing your own banking and finance, or maybe research and plan for your dream vacation. Another option is taking a course online. LinkedIn Learning has a variety of courses that you can take, and many of us can access LinkedIn Learning using a public library card for free. Or you can sign up for 1 month free trial to look at various courses. If your work involves problem solving, try to problem solve things in your daily lives. For example, figuring out how to repair things around the home. There are lots of YouTube videos that can show you how to repair things around the house, and you can practice your problem solving skills that way. Memory. If your memory is affected, you can practice your memory by reading a magazine, remembering some interesting facts from the magazine, or watching an informative video online. Try to remember as many points as you can. And you can always use strategies such as inputting events into your calendar or smartphones, or setting reminders on your device to help you remember certain activities. I have many clients who set up reminders on their phone to remind them of when to take the medications. Planning and organizing. If you need to work on planning and organizational skills, you can work on things such as planning a surprise party for your loved one. And nowadays, many of us rely on technology to help us plan and organize. And I'd like to show you a few apps that can help us stay organized. So here there's an app called Calendars Planner To-Do List. There you can share your calendars with others, set up task reminders. Another app called Things 3. It helps you to manage projects, quickly add to-do lists, or schedule plans. Another app is called 1Password. It's a password managing app that helps you manage different passwords across devices. So there are endless lists of apps and technology to help us with memory, planning, and organizing. And the next barrier to employment is personal care. So if personal care is taking up too much of your time and energy, consider practicing it to improve your technique and speed, and using devices such as a reacher or dress aid could help as well. However, if it's still too much time consuming, then consider getting help from a personal support worker so they can focus on your time and energy on work. I have worked with various clients who hired personal support workers to go into workplace a couple times a day to help them with personal care so that they have enough time and energy for work. But if you think you just need some extra time to get, to take care of yourself while you are at work, you can always request your employer to provide you with extra break time as one of your job accommodations when you go back to work. Mobility. If mobility is a challenge, explore ways to help you to get around. For example, if you normally use a cane at home, but you need to walk around a lot at work, why don't you consider getting a scooter to help you get around at work? Of course, you have to be safe enough to drive one and to be able to get on and off safely. So there are endless opportunity or possibilities to gain your independence and ability when talking about going back to work. And the last one to consider is transportation. So when looking at going back to work, you have to look at how to get to work. Are you able to drive? Do you need modifications to your vehicle? Is taking public transit an option? Or privately paid transportation such as Uber? I've got clients who pay for Uber to help them get to work. Or do you have door-to-door accessible transportation services? And you also have to consider how much energy do you exert to get yourself to and from work, and would you have enough energy to get yourself through your day after you get to work? So now we've gone over all the aspects to consider when looking at returning to work based on the employment readiness checklist from the American Stroke Society. And And for those of you who are still unsure about paid employment, you might consider volunteering as a stepping stone to improve your readiness to return to work. Volunteering is great because it gives you some recent work-related experience. It can enrich your resume so that you can be more of a competitive edge when looking at when the right job comes along. Or you might want to take some refresher courses in your related fields to get some updated knowledge. And LinkedIn has lots of courses to choose from. And lastly, as I've mentioned before, doing simulated work tasks is a great way to test yourself if you're ready for work. And you can also gain some confidence by doing so. And depending on the type of job you work, you need to be creative in coming up with those simulated work tasks. For example, if you work in an assembly line putting together a product, you might want to simulate your work task by putting together a model car by using various hand tools. Or if you're a cashier, you can simulate handling cash and chatting with the customers at the same time, etc. And so if gone through the employment readiness checklist and think that you're ready to regain employment, these are some of the places where you can get some assistance from. There are vocational rehab counselors, there are organizations such as Marshall Dimes and others. And for those who may return to their own job or previous job, your employer or your long-term disability insurers may help with the return to work process. And some would even fund some of these services and resources that I mentioned. And Katie, our next presenter, will talk more about resources and steps to regain employment. And that concludes my part of the presentation.
For my portion of this presentation, I'm going to discuss how you may proceed after you have come to the decision that returning to work is a possibility. After considering the barriers and the strategies that Andrea has laid out, I'll outline the options that are available to you and when you feel that you are ready, but aren't quite sure what the next steps may be. So specifically, I'm going to summarize the specialized assessments that can be completed to figure out where you stand prior to returning to work. Then we'll discuss the options that are available that may assist you in that transition, as well as what involvement your employer may be able to provide. There are other options for how you may access these services and be referred for them that I will also outline near the end of the presentation. And then we'll follow that with the question period at the end, where you can feel free to ask Andrea or myself any questions that you may have regarding the information shared today. Okay, so where do you need to begin? At this stage, you may be questioning whether or not you have the ability to return to your previous employment, or whether it may be necessary for you to seek out other employment opportunities. So what you'll need to consider in the beginning is whether your previous employment will be suitable from a physical and cognitive abilities perspective. You may find that although you are in the stage of recovery that returning to gainful employment is possible, some jobs require higher physical or cognitive demands than others. And so that type of position you are seeking may need to change based off of where you're at in your recovery, or you may need to take some steps to increase your tolerance to certain demands to be able to reach that point of returning to that job. So luckily, there are services that are available that can help you determine where you stand in terms of your cognitive demands and physical demands, and it can help you to figure out what your current limitations may be and how that relates to a specific job. So for starters, we have functional capacity evaluations, or FCEs. They're also sometimes referred to as functional ability evaluations. These are very useful in developing suitable job goals. They're useful in measuring progress or providing guidance for the rehab programs that you're participating in. These are specialized assessments that can be completed either in one day or in 2 consecutive days, depending on what the referral source requests. And they're usually about 4 to 8 hours in total, 4 hours per day. So they're supposed to basically simulate a workday and testing what your tolerance might be in a 4-hour workday, and then basing that to predict what an 8-hour workday might entail for you. So they they'll be assessing your physical tolerance for different work-related tasks. That will include your postural tolerances, such as sitting, standing, walking, as well as your lifting capabilities, carrying capabilities, your grip strength, pushing and pulling strength. These will all be tested to determine what frequency you are able to complete the tasks, and also how many number of hours you might be capable of working in a day. And then this information can be used afterwards to compare to a job. So cognitive functional capacities are very similar in some ways, in that they assess all of the same functional capabilities as the functional capacity evaluations, but they also will be assessing your cognitive function. So if there are concerns with your cognitive abilities, they might refer you for a COG FCE as opposed to just a FCE. So this type of assessment is going to also assess your capacity for job demands such as attention, memory, mental flexibility, your ability to stay organized, your ability to problem solve, and so on. So next is the job site assessments or job demands analysis. These are used to address the demands of a specific job. So this is not exactly assessing how you would be able to complete that particular job, but more the job itself. So it's looking at what the essential and non-essential job duties of the job require in terms of physical and cognitive demands. So again, it's not necessarily that they're going to assess you and how you might be able to complete that job. It's going to be an assessment of the job itself. And what this hopes to achieve is, if you are planning to seek out a new position, or the demands of a specific job are not clear, then this assessment would allow for you to be able to compare what your abilities are with that of the demands of the job. Now, in contrast, the functional or cognitive work capacity assessments, these are personalized to the individual, as they will compare your determined limitations to that of the specific duties of the position or of multiple positions in the same workplace. So in comparison to the job site analysis or the job demands analysis, this one's going to actually take what your precautions, your established precautions are, and compare it to what the job demands entail. And from there, they'll be able to make a decision whether or not this job is suitable, not suitable, or possibly suitable with accommodations. And then once that has been provided to your employer would be able to determine whether or not they can accommodate those accommodations or not, and then what steps might be coming next in determining if you can proceed with returning to that position. So whether you have had these assessments or not, if you're at a point at which returning to work is a possibility, there may be a few barriers that still stand between you and your success. Ideally, those assessments that I've mentioned previously can answer a lot of the questions of what you're capable of, what the job might entail. But once those questions are answered, you may still need help making that transition back to work. So you're going to be asking yourself, and I'm sure your employer is asking as well, can you currently meet the demands of the job? And if not, what might be needed to ensure your successful return to work? We may now need to look at either improving your function and your tolerance to the certain tasks of the job, or we may need to determine what other accommodations are needed in the workplace. So what can be offered to those of you that may need a little support in bridging the gap from where you're at and where you need to be? One option, I think that Andrea had mentioned this as well, would be the work hardening programs they're a helpful intervention in helping you build the stamina and tolerance needed for certain tasks. This is generally completed at a physiotherapy clinic or a multidisciplinary clinic. These multidisciplinary clinics generally have OTs on staff as well, and that allows them to include cognitive tasks as goals for the work hardening program as well. So while you have certainly probably engaged in rehab programs before, the work hardening is specifically meant for targeting the tasks that you are struggling with. So as opposed to just a recovery rehab program where you're just trying to get better. And this is going to be targeted to improving whatever tasks are specific to what job you're going to be returning to, or potentially returning to if it's a different job than what you have previously completed. So once you are in a position that employment has either been confirmed or a return to work is either coming up or maybe has already occurred, an ergonomic assessment might be necessary to ensure that you are properly set up in your workspace. Often people assume that an ergonomic assessment is just assessing an office workstation, but that's not the case. This can also be important for setting up properly in other environments, such as factory work, or if you drive for your job, then ensuring that your vehicle is set up properly as well. This assessment is going to be taking into account any previously determined limitations as well. So if there's already been in place a precaution for prolonged standing or prolonged sitting, if you struggle with maybe your mobility with walking, this assessment will take into account those precautions as well. And then they're also going to take measurements of yourself and of your workstation to ensure that it is set up in a way that is going to properly support you and will reduce the risk of injury, overuse, and also reducing the risk of fatigue in the workplace. This assessor is also going to potentially provide you with education on how to adjust your existing equipment. So if you have a fully adjustable office chair and you don't quite know how to make those adjustments, or say maybe you have a height adjustable workstation that you work at in your in a factory setting, the assessor can teach you how to properly adjust those pieces of equipment so that you are using proper body mechanics in your day-to-day work. Another beneficial service that is available is job coaching. So this does not mean that someone's going to come into your workplace and either tell you how to do your job or teach you how to do your job. That's not the purpose of job coaching. The purpose is to help you develop different strategies to succeed in your job. And this might be from a cognitive or a functional standpoint. So they're going to help you. The benefit of it is that they're going to be in person and in real time, and they're going to be able to be providing you with different strategies while you're in the workplace, and they can help you implement them during your workday. So they're going to be helping you break down barriers. They're going to be maybe they might notice different body mechanics that you're using that aren't quite as efficient as others. So they might quietly butt in your workday and just introduce different ways of doing that task that might help you reduce fatigue and help you to pace your day better. And they might also make some equipment suggestions if necessary to help you make that transition back to work easier. And this is also a service that is offered like on a subsequent sessions. Like it's not just a one-time assessment. This is something that is offered maybe on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, depending on what the what you need. And the benefit of that is that there's follow-up over and over again that you can, if something's not working or if new barriers are arising that you're struggling with, then the job coach can be there in person to address them and help you work through those barriers. So now that we have outlined the services that are out there that may be helpful for you during your return to work, how do you go about sourcing these? Because of course, there are costs associated with all of these assessments. So a good place to start is whether or not you are still employed with your previous employer. If so, the first step would be to contact your HR department. A lot of companies, particularly larger ones, but also some smaller ones, have in-house services that they can provide you with. For example, they might be able to, or they might have an in-house ergonomist, and they might be able to assess your workplace or workstation through the employer. or they might have programs in place through occupational health and safety department or through your union that can help you to facilitate a return to work process, including sending you for some of the assessments or services that I have mentioned earlier. If no in-house services are available, your employer may be open to seeking out services with you to assist in your successful return to work. So either way, if you have a job that you're planning to return to, or you're still employed with your previous employer, it's best to reach out to them first to figure out what the next steps are going to be in the return to work process. There are also lots of other options available though. So if you are not in if you're no longer employed with your previous employer, you may find yourself in a position where you're receiving long-term disability benefits. A lot of these companies have return to work coordinators that will assist you with employment or may refer you to these services. So you would be best to contact your direct representative from those companies, and they will be able to assist you in what programs they specifically offer. But generally, if you're on long-term disability, they would like to see you go back to work. So they will help you through that transition. You may also be receiving Canada Pension Plan disability or provincial benefits. So in Ontario, that would be like ODSP or Ontario Works. Again, they have programs in place that will help you with returning to work. So your best bet is to contact your representative for either of those benefits and figure out what they can offer you in terms of employment services and referrals to different assessments to help you in the process. Some personal health benefits and health insurance companies also might include coverage for some of the assessments, since all of the assessments that I mentioned are completed by healthcare professionals. This is likely on a case-by-case basis, and plans differ. So it's best to call and inquire what your benefits might cover. On the next slide, I'm also going to include a link to the Heart and Stroke Foundation website. They have a long list of organizations that might be able to provide government funding for employment support, and they may be able to fund these assessments as well. Of course, if none of these options are applicable to you and there is no other avenues to approach, then paying out of pocket is obviously an option for these services. So just a few additional resources that you might find helpful. As I mentioned previously, March of Dimes Canada has a very large employment services program that includes all of these specialized assessments that I've outlined earlier, but they also have programs in place that are meant to help individuals with their resume building. So they might help with job exploration. They'll help you with your job search. They'll help you prepare for interviews, and they'll also help you with on-the-job support when you're able to find employment. As I mentioned in the last slide, the Heart and Stroke Foundation, they have a very excellent, wide-ranging list of resources. They have specific to Canada-wide, but they also have it broken down by province. So each province has their own employment services organizations, and they may be able to help you with funding to seek out the services that are available to help you return to work. Again, I do encourage you to go through that and try to look at the province specific, because I know there are regions in Canada that might not have as far-reaching help for services for after stroke, but they do have a very comprehensive list and can probably, hopefully, point you in the right direction of who to reach out for in your specific area. March of Dimes is Canada-wide. We do have external assessors on our rosters that cover most areas, but there are regions that we may not have coverage for, so that province-specific list is helpful for giving you other options outside of March of Dimes. And finally, I have included a link to the National Occupational Classification Career Handbook database. This website allows you to search for different jobs in Canada, and it provides specifics on what the job duties and demands are for each job. For example, a particular job will have a strength demand level, or they will include which cognitive abilities are essential for completing the job duties. So after you have completed an assessment, such as an FCE or functional capacity evaluation, you may be you may like to use this database to find different jobs that would be suitable to you. So it's just a helpful little database that can help with your job search as well.